Okay, let's start.
Yeah, we'll go ahead. Just collecting agenda topics from the group, FHIR, Josh, Dan. We have a couple out there, just, housekeeping stuff, checking in on reporting. We wanted to potentially defer the conversation on so that view definition intents or multiple resources in view definition until like Ryan and Graham could be here and more testing. But just wanted to open up to you guys for agenda topics for today.
Yeah, as we discussed, let's walk through what test coverage we have, what missing parts, so we can focus next week
Okay.
on
All right.
test. Yeah.
We can be agile. So, all right. I see Ryan has joined us. Awesome. Great to see you. So just some quick housekeeping for folks. Everybody go back. I'm trying to find them now. I think we have two polls. If you scroll back in Zulip, one for scheduling, although I guess we might have to make some new ones because we're running in. I'll make new polls for March. Let's put it that way, for scheduling SQL on FHIR and OMOP and SQL on FHIR on Spark. We didn't get a lot of people voting, so I'll have a to-do for myself to put that to add new items for that for March. So scheduling, other general housekeeping items. I did not get to any of my to-dos. I was going to move some of the content, some of the narrative content of the spec over to Google Docs so that we can collaboratively edit them. I'll have that this week. Ryan, you had a task for taking a look at the spec cleanup that we discussed. Just checking in on that. I don't think you did any work on that, but just double check.
Yeah, I was out. I was traveling last week and I got back and recovering from a bit of a cold. But I'll try to get to that soon.
Yeah, same boat for me. Okay, so I'll keep those to do. I see there was a number of threads on some of the topic items we talked about last week, but I don't see any that needs a resolution or discussion. I think all of them came to a resolution. Am I missing something? Is there anything for today to discuss on the active threads from this week? Okay, I think that's a no, but we can just obviously continue in Zulip with that. Let's see. So yeah, next up, and guys drop in any additional agenda items. I think that the next one is tests. So the test infrastructure. Igor wanted to share some progress on that.
Yeah, let me share it. So first of all, we finally managed to get our site back online, and as you can see, it shows which tests are working on our reference implementation, which are not. So we added some. We brought it back, and it's now working. And also some minor changes were added to workflows. But as per tests and coverage, we have our internal file where we track what we have not yet covered. And as you can see here, several functions of FHIR are not covered right now. By the way, I took items from the Google Sheet table. I found it here. So Nikolai said it's more or less exhausting feature lists for SQL and FHIR 2, and I thought it would be okay to just copy and paste it here and go through them one. So what do you think? Is it exhausting, or do we need to test something else?
I think we can check with the documentation page where all the functions are listed. So
that's right.
And probably I can create the thread in Zulip so people will be able to overview this spreadsheet. And
I see. Yeah.
Let's do it in the chat. Yeah.
So yeah, let's do it in the chat. So yeah, also we've made a prototype of a test runner that works entirely on JSONs. So it reads JSONs and evaluates them as tests. It's still it's not in a master branch, but it's not the way we run our tests right now. And no, I've heard some. What I understood from our discussions is that we want to move to this type of testing rather than having everything in JavaScript.
I would recommend to cover all features and then switch. So let's focus
sure.
on the value and then on the
But I just wanted to show that it's just like it worked like a charm. Actually, it's just as versatile as using one test, and I think it's coming up pretty nice. But yeah, sure, we can.
It's
Do
very
all this
nice,
stuff.
but I think like
Then-
writing experience will be twice worse than
Well,
after.
maybe.
One of the problems we had with the current setup was that it was kind of generating the JSON.
Well, I actually
so-
fixed that misbehavior,
Oh.
and now it generates it no matter if it passes or not. So this one is crossed. The other thing I've noticed is that you can't control the format of numbers when you're generating JSONs from the code. So you can't. There is an issue from you, John, about that are just one. It's like values that are integer, and they should be double. And JavaScript doesn't divide numbers in integers and doubles, so it just writes straight one without the floating part. So I guess we can fix that later when we jump into JSON only way.
The input, so it's difficult to test that unless we have something that can actually preserve that.
Well, that may be the problem.
Yeah, let's create issues so that's hard to cover in reference.
All right.
Yeah.
So, and that's pretty much all from me. So I will post this to Zulip and have just people discuss if something is missing from this list, and then we will just.
Or we can work in spreadsheet. So and then you copy spreadsheet to
Sure.
just refresh that we need like everybody should look at the spreadsheet.
All right.
And the building of report page now with
Yeah, it works, and now it works only for the master branch. So that's covered.
that would be nice to add like examples of other implementation reports like Puzzlink and 8box. So if it's working, let's try to add them to report
Yeah,
page.
sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, yeah, John, just can you give us a sense of how much effort that would be to get the Pathling implementations reports into test visualizer?
We're working on it. Hopefully it's not too far off. Also bearing in mind that we're still kind of on a feature branch ourselves. So we would sort of initially just be sort of saying this is our in progress feature branch. So we haven't merged any of this stuff into our sort of mainline yet. But yeah, we've pretty much got all the tests passing. So we were kind of working on that as a priority, and we shouldn't be too far off on publishing the report.
Great. Super. Yeah, it sounds awesome. Any other thoughts around testing or test coverage? I think I had a thought maybe it's time to deprecate or sort of feature voting page for something else. I don't know if it's sort of outlived its welcome, something more useful for this phase of testing. I don't know if Igor, you heard that, or Nikolai, but that the purpose of that page is really to vote on high level features. I don't know if it's useful anymore for what we're doing.
I think it should be moved to the tests, yes, but for now it doesn't matter what we use to like in the group to decide what's missed. Let's use this spreadsheet.
The one we have today is what I'm saying. You want to continue to use the one we have today. Okay.
Yeah. And then we will move all this into the tests, and when test coverage will be finished, the report page will show everything we covered. Yeah, because on the report page there are two parts. If you remember, the one part is visualizing tests, so everybody can walk through the tests and see what the tests are done like in a visual form. And the second is matrix, where you can see like feature by feature. If we were good on description of the tests, so this will give us the matrix, what's covered with the test.
Yeah, I'm not concerned when it moves over to the testing infrastructure. I just had a thought that maybe we want to have a limited set of artifacts so people don't get confused. But if you're however you guys want to do it, obviously it's fine by me.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the voting page, basically the results of it confirm the scope that we have. Like we don't have any gap between what we've got in the spec feature-wise and what people were thinking we should have in the first version. So from that perspective, I think one thing for me is just like greening up the build, like we need to actually test, we need to do a bit of work on the reference implementation as well. Like I think there's a few gaps there, and we just need to get the main build actually passing so that we've got a better indicator of whether we're breaking things. And yeah, that would be a really good step forward, I think.
Yeah, that's what we agree. Yeah, so that the ref implementation should be green.
So I think that's a an ask for the whole community here is where to put your focus is firming up the reference implementation. So all of the tests and the newly generated tests are passing in green. So I think it's more of a statement, right? But I think that's a good one. Okay. Again, I didn't have a really good agenda for today, but final edits to the spec. Is there any discussion points that we haven't already raised that we're not already tracking around the spec other than test coverage?
I don't think so. I think probably the big one from last time was the column ordering, but I feel like we resolved that on Zulip unless anyone had any sort of outstanding objections to that. And I think the resolution for that was to basically keep the spec as it is, but add an additional qualification that, so not constrain the output of view runners, but say if there is column ordering semantics in the output format, then you should use the ordering that we've defined. So that was just sort of a minor clarification to the wording there.
I think take a look, obviously, John just summarized the comments there, and, take a look at it and see if everyone is in agreement, in alignment on that one. There were a couple others that I didn't get a chance to look at before this meeting, but I don't think there were any outstanding issues that needed discussion live in this meeting. Go ahead and raise them.
Yeah, one question I did have was, so are we shooting for some sort of draft to present at the May connector? So is there a particular date we need to have this ready by, and what does that look like, and how is it different to what we've got now? I suppose we've obviously got some outstanding sort of editorial stuff. We've got some tidying up of the tests and greening up of the build, but maybe we could just sort of figure out, are we going to sort of cut a version by a particular date, and what else do we need to do by then?
And so, yeah,
be focused on
that up to the group. Gotcha.
I think we should be focused on, something that we're calling a release, which lives at a URL that will be stable over time. So that's not quite our current build site, but we should figure out where the home for the spec will be, at least for now. So that could be asking Graham to publish it on FHIR.org, or it could just be registering a domain for the project and posting a copy there. But someplace that we can point people to that we think has some expectation of stability, just as kind of a marker of the release.
How does that sound to everybody?
It sounds good. I would set some milestones, like published version, the version 1, so I know people can review that and make some comments. Let's play this balloting game, or at least pretend that we are publishing something and people reviewing and making comments.
Yeah, I think hopefully that sounds good to everyone. Josh, just on logistics, you gave two different options there, potentially having Graham hosted on FHIR.org versus, and we haven't talked about this, potentially a project site itself. Does anybody in the group have thoughts, pros and cons? I'm not familiar with the process necessarily. So, maybe you want to describe what the process might be, Josh, for having Graham hosted on FHIR.org, if there are any overhead or, potential issues there.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess just have to ask Graham. There's a bunch of specs that he does sort of upload there in a process that he manages. I guess my personal preference would be to host it somewhere that we control so that we're not, accidentally caught up when there's a server SSL certificate issue on FHIR.org, as happens from time to time, or, we want to maintain immutable content, or, just these kinds of things that we might rather have direct control over.
Could it be GitHub page?
Yeah,
it can be on GitHub pages, but I just think it's better not to use a .github.io domain for it.
Okay.
So I just suggest that we, have some domain or subdomain that we control, so that way, if we want to change hosting providers later, that doesn't have to be a user visible alteration.
And just for context for folks, Josh, when you say FHIR.org, you mean sort of sandbox for the FHIR community projects? I'm just kind of reiterating it for the whole group who might not be familiar.
Some of the content that Graham posts there is, as you described, sort of FHIR community process. But if you go to FHIR.org, there's a link in the left-hand navigation bar called implementation guides, and they're not all managed through that FHIR community process. I'm not totally sure why some things are there and other things are not. Graham might be able to explain that.
Yeah, I mean, personally, from just seeing the FHIR.org and just reminding myself about it, my personal preference would be to set up our own project site here, so we sort of just control our own destiny a little bit. We don't know if what will happen to that, and can be responsive to any issues. Control maybe make the content nicer. It'll sort of be buried a little bit in this. So that's my personal preference, but just want to put it out to the team.
I see most of them on hl7.org.
I think a good option for us in the interim is to have like a GitHub, use the GitHub pages thing. And if we want to sort of put that behind a domain, I guess that kind of could be like a staging area for like this process of socializing and the draft, I guess. And then beyond that, who knows, maybe this can end up on something like hl7.org, but maybe for now, as Josh says, somewhere that we control would be good.
And I think so we can set up the custom domain for GitHub pages.
Yeah, it's very easy. Nobody on this call happens to own SQL on FHIR.com by any chance. I just noticed that's been registered since 2015 and nobody's doing anything with it.
Okay, let's buy and
I wouldn't pay for a domain like that.
If you want, I can
private,
buy. So
private registry.
No, I don't know who owns it, so it's not clear if it's for sale. I was just thinking if somebody had registered it, it could be somebody on this call.
You guys a good deal on it, I'll tell you.
Yeah,
there we go.
I don't really own it, no. But
yeah, we can. So yeah, I was suggesting. Yeah, when I was suggesting sort of control our destiny, I meant technically. I think let's put the proposal out there. GitHub pages behind a new domain that we sort of register and share ownership in air quotes with. How does that sound just as a proposal out to the group? Any objections to that?
Do we need
approach?
SQL on FHIR.org or .com?
Depends on if we're making money.
It should be org, yeah?
I would take the org and be happy with the $8 registration fee.
Okay.
A fun domain, FHIR. Oh, it's Iran. That's the thing about all FHIR domains, right? It's Iran. So I might get a little politically hairy there. Okay, so all kidding aside, I'm going to put that down as a to-do. Nikolai, do you want to take that one?
Sorry?
Do you want to take managing or getting your crew to set up a domain? We could have suggestions in Zulip for naming.
Yeah, let's do so. I can buy this domain and configure the GitHub pages.
Okay.
I see the SQL on Dash on FHIR is free. So we can easily buy it, configure GitHub pages. So and eventually it's going to be like a prefix in the canonical resources. Yes. So that's Josh. I think why it's important to have stable domain.
Yeah, if we're going to maintain the guide outside of the HL7 workgroup process, then yeah, we can pick that and use it as a base. Mm-hmm. I kind of feel like the last time we talked through this, though, the folks in this group were interested in trying to move it towards a workgroup process. So we could see what we think once we get the release candidate out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a broad discussion. Want to hear everybody's thoughts on that. I think at least in the interim, for the milestone 1, milestone 2 process, say for the next 6+ months, the GitHub pages behind a domain makes sense to me personally. And then, that separate discussion about should it go into the HL7 process, that we can handle it at that time. So how does that sound?
To be honest, I would prefer to have like at least subdomain of hl7.org or FHIR. It sounds more
so you can ask Graham
serious.
for a subdomain, but just you have to know that Graham's DNS is like managed by a friend that he doesn't always have direct control of, and it's like there's some wonkiness there.
Okay, got you.
That's like me and my dad, and I'm always forgetting to renew, so he gets mad at me.
Is Graham responsible for both, for HL7.org and for FHIR.org, or Graham?
No, it just FHIR.org.
Because I see that most of IGs are under HL7.org.
Sure, the official HL7 workgroup products all have to live there.
Mm-hmm. And if eventually we're going to be there, so maybe we should consider like...
I think we should still shoot for eventually promoting this to be under a work group. But I think, as we've previously discussed, this initial development phase is probably better suited to being outside of that. but I think that should still be the eventual goal.
Cool. So, release candidate 1 can live on this domain that Nikolai will register, and we'll leave our options open for what happens downstream. We might have some breaking changes to our extension URLs, or we can advocate to keep them if they are already in use. And there is some precedent for that.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, to the group.
Hey folks, sorry, I'm recovering from a cold here, so but I did have one. I mean, if time allows today, I wouldn't mind spending a little time just looking at the site itself. And I mean, there's several pages that are dated or maybe not relevant, and we talked about moving them elsewhere. I was thinking about maybe just going through the site and we can talk about through some pages that I'd be inclined to just for now take a first pass of let's remove some stuff, let's get it cleaned up, narrow it down, and then reorganize what we want to keep and then add to it from there. So, and of course, and then some of the stuff that we remove could end up in a distinct implementation guide or something like that, I think, as we discussed a couple weeks ago. So if folks are interested in that, I mean, if you're not interested in that, I mean, I won't be offended if you drop off the call, but I wouldn't mind taking some time today, just kind of go through the site. All right.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so let me select just a tab here, turn off the share on. All right. Okay, so yeah, hopefully you can, so hopefully you see the site up that I'm projecting. So just kind of clicking through it a little bit, and I think that the home, and so just right now, I'm just going to focus on stuff to remove. And so I think that the home and the purpose stuff, we'll reorganize these, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. The spec, I think all this content is still relevant. Again, we'll reorganize it. So yeah, we definitely want all the layers and that sort of thing. I think the areas that we might start looking at removing are the guidance and some of the see also content. I think that maybe the inclination I might have that I think we discussed a couple of weeks ago is this guidance should exist in the different implementation guides. So I guess would folks object to a pull request that simply removes this from the site for now, just to sort of get things cleaned up? Like I said, it'll still be in history. You can move it to an IG. So I guess that's the first question that they'll have to. Any major objections with removing this guided section from the site as our first step here?
No, I think that's good, and I do think that's consistent with what we talked about last time.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. I believe so. Going back and looking at my notes.
Yeah, and I would say, I think it makes sense, like we discussed last time. But I guess the only point is, and it would be nice to have some sort of a link or something to that as well. I don't know, maybe the layers page is the right place for it. I'm not sure, but maybe until the time that we have that part K schema going.
Okay.
But it would be nice.
Yeah. I mean, we can add a link to it from the layers page. So yeah, I think that makes sense. And so I think my inclination is to kind of take a pass of let's clean stuff up, and then maybe we can add a link. But we definitely will keep the SQL on FHIR, V1, the URLs, this will be unchanged. So yeah, if we want to link to that from layers or something, we can as we organize the site. So I think that makes sense. Okay, so yeah, sounds like there's success there. So I'll put together a pull request. I mean, it's just deleting things, so it'll be simple. So yeah, we'll remove these. Similarly, let's jump over to the see also page. So which was some of these, I think there's this missed stuff. I think this was a contributor that's for some very early exploration. Honestly, I think this page is out of date and maybe doesn't add much clarity, or perhaps even removes clarity. So I'm inclined to remove this miscellanea page for now. We can always re-add it. Please raise your hand if you object to that. And then on the tech matrix stuff as well, I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff here that's maybe this content may belong in some of the implementation guides we described either previously with the guidance. I think this was added pretty early on to these efforts when we're doing some exploratory work and hasn't really been maintained. So I guess what the TLDR is I'm inclined to remove. I mean, I don't know if at least remove this misc page entirely, and then probably, I mean, some or all. Is there anything in this tech matrix page we should keep for now? I guess we can always re-add it later. If nobody has really strong feelings, then I might just remove the tech matrix and the miscellaneous page as well. Yeah. Any objections?
Yeah, I think we've gotten the approval of the group, I think, at this point, and you should just wield the axe, Ryan. But I think there's two sort of main sections or groupings for me, which is this sort of introduction, background, purpose, architecture type grouping. And then the second grouping is the actual normative specification part, which is basically the view definition and the processing model. So if we can sort of, the structure of some pages or whatever, I think that would be positive.
Yeah,
let's chat through that just real quick because it's come up a couple of times. So, we talked about a couple of different options here, but Ryan, can you scroll up to the top? Okay. So we have layers, but layers is not really normative, right? So I might suggest breaking that out and then just have, the only normative section here is what? View definition of the processing model. Actually, a processing model might not even be normative. So in my mind, we might just have one normative page, which is just view definition. Does anybody, do people also see it that way or different way?
I think it's okay to split things into separate pages if it aids readability, but I think they should be grouped appropriately. So for me, the system layers actually belongs more with the sort of intro purpose architecture stuff. So maybe that's like a top level grouping at least. It could still be separate pages, but they're kind of grouped together as the sort of background content. Whereas I think the view definition and the processing model belong together. Again, I don't think they necessarily need to be all jammed onto the same page. I think we could separate things out if it aids readability, but as long as it's kind of clear that those two sort of sections are separate.
I see it the same way, right? Like one category. So imagine that the view system layers page goes to the category that includes home, purpose, introductory content, and then view definition and processing model. I think processing, they fit together better. I'm not sure if processing model is technically normative, but those two in a separate category, that makes a lot of sense to me. And then, or do we have, Nikolai, I'll get to you in a second. Do we have any more, are we going to keep any of the guidance pages, or is that they're both gone, right?
I think they're both gone, yeah.
Okay, right. So that was my thought about sort of site organization. And of course you can make more pages. I don't know what those category headers might be necessarily. Spec probably is good for the normative section. And then, miscellanea can go away, tech matrix can go away, and then artifacts. What is in artifacts right now? Actually, just
artifacts probably line. Yeah, so that's just basically the view definition itself, which this basically just links back to the view definition page. The artifacts page is actually generated by the IG, and then just the examples there. So I mean, really, I think that maybe the artifacts logically belongs with the view definition and the processing model. So maybe those three things can go together in terms under the spec.
That feels right to me, and I think that's how other IGs take care of it, or how they do it. So that was my thought, having those two, essentially somehow distinguishing those two categories and just keeping them nice and clean, separate. Nikolai.
Yeah, so I think we're working on one page now, which is called view definition. That's what we're doing in the last half year. So, and probably from my side, it should be called view definition, and the process model and examples and other stuff, it's a part of view definition. I hope eventually we will come up with other resources like query or something like this. But for me, logically, we just describe the view definition and the engine behind view definition and all this stuff. So it's just opinion. So that's I think it would be nice to have a view definition in the top bar.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah,
we could put like view definition in the top bar. I mean, it's already a pretty long page, but I mean, we could put that and then move the processing model put that as include that in the view definition page.
Dan, I guess, I was going to jump into it's on that topic. I guess related to that, I'm wondering if we want to have a view definition page and then a view runner page, and what the item on the view runner page right now is processing model, but we may want to put other content there. I don't feel strongly about this, but I think that would also help with folks who are trying to understand the spec, to understand the kind of idea that there's this data model that's the view definition, and then software that executes it against, text resources or a data warehouse or whatever. So I don't know. I mean, I guess one option would be to have a page like that.
Yeah. So what would you have? So in the view runner page, you'd have the processing model content and.
Yeah, so right now it would, I guess, be processing model, and then we could also at some point put links to the tests for the different view runners and implementations and stuff like that. So it would kind of be a logical split there. Reference implementation feels like it would go under that to me.
Okay, I mean, I think we are aligning on some categorization, and it does make sense to me also, Dan, that we break out a page specifically about the view runner processing model. Would you think think of that as under one category heading or sort of multiple category headings? Like, could it be the way we have it now, it's like spec and then view definition page, view runner page, and then that sort of thing? Or do you feel like that distinction between the view definition and the view runners or executing the view definitions feel like a top level category?
I mean, I think as long as we don't have a lot of pages, we should maybe just put them all at the top level, I guess.
Mhm.
Then we don't have to worry about nesting. And if we're talking about like 3 or 4 pages in the spec, just put them all on top.
Monocline grouping. I have to go, but please continue and just let me know. And then, maybe we'll, Ryan, you and I sync up potentially on some of this categorization stuff and, a really simple, view of where we want to change it.
Yeah, I mean, we can, so I guess like for the immediate thing, I'll take the axe to the things that we talked about. And then I guess we could put together like a little shared Google Doc or something to maybe an outline, like a site outline type doc, and then fiddle with that until we land on a structure that we like. And then once we have that, we can just go ahead and update this.
All right, sounds good. See you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Well, yeah, we can keep. I don't know. I guess so. Maybe right now, like kind of that. Yeah, it might be easier just to kind of start putting this in a Google Doc. But yeah, I feel like we'll maybe basically home and purpose basically get combined. I think some of the content from home maybe we create like a separate top level contribution page and credits page, like because I feel like this could be moved out of, if we're going to combine home and purpose, then maybe this contribution stuff goes in a separate page.
Yeah, I would suggest, I don't know, if you guys know which you really like, how it's structured, so we can take it as an example. Yeah. So,
does anyone have any IGs they really like?
Yeah, that's my question. To be honest,
I
think structured data capturing for me quite well structured. So this is the last I read. Yeah. I don't know, is there any kind of recommendation for IG structure, Josh? Then have you ever heard like this? Like, because I see that some IGs taking some ideas from others, like introducing roles, like modulus. Yeah, let's say in SDC they have like form manager, form filler, and all this stuff. In our terminology, it could be like a view definition validator role, the view definition engine role.
Yeah, I agree that could be helpful. I don't know that there's out of the box recommendations. Like, I don't know that we've gotten quite to that level of maturity or consistency as a community, but there are certainly IGs that have this kind of role orientation. And I think that can be really good for onboarding. I'm also reminded of the comment that Ryan made on our last call, I think, which was basically like, if we can just sort of pare back the unnecessary stuff, we'll start deciding what to add in and regrow it. And so we could probably manage some of that organically.
Yeah, I think doing this like in a series of steps and pare stuff back and then re-adding it from there. So yeah, I'm definitely going to trim a bunch of stuff, and I'll put together the PRs in the next day or two, get those out of there. And then, yeah, we can figure out how we want to add some stuff back into.
Actually, the SDC spec that you just mentioned, Nikolai, I think pretty much reflects what we've just been discussing. Like it has the sort of background information grouped up and then the spec. And yeah, I think it's actually pretty close. It's obviously a much bigger than what we're talking about, but same sort of structure.
Okay, so I'll just jump over to, I just opened it up. So I assume this is the tab. So yeah, you got just the home with like intro there. Oh, this is, and then table of contents. We could probably maybe skip this for now and background spec. Actually, this is actually the most IGs that I've kind of navigated.
Does this one have the kind of role orientation? I mean, I think there are a couple of roles in SDC. It's not super clear from the menu structure.
There should be some diagram.
I think it's in that, if you click on the specification workflow, I think that's where they start to talk about some of this stuff.
Yeah. Here they start talking about roles.
Yeah, no, it's like, okay, it's under table of content. Okay, well, I mean, I think this looks reasonable, at least a high level structure. So home, the homepage provides a nice kind of hook and introduction, get people comfortable with it. And then we can, then I think background and spec. So maybe it makes sense from our structure. We could have a home. I mean, maybe we even combine home and background to start out with until there's enough content to split them.
At least reverse engineering existing specs so we can get to model what we want, which we want to have.
And sorry, just checking that we are going to keep that model of layers, right? It should be somewhere still, because then it makes sense, what is where in the picture view definition fits in.
The home, I mean, yeah, maybe it can just live under like one longer introduction homepage.
Okay.
I think this is, I mean, this view is I mean, whether this or an updated version of this is I think a pretty key introductory step to this.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is kind of mental model, yes, you can keep, and we probably can even expand it, because for now we have two kind of, one which are running on top of like generic FHIR databases and the ETL pipelines. I think in intro we can draw both styles of implementation. So, and this may help people to understand.
Right.
These layers potentially related to like FHIR native databases. Yes, so it's not for all implementation. For ETL, it will have slightly different diagram.
Right. Yeah, I think it's such an important sort of perspective to help kind of understand the mental model that I'd be inclined we could even to take this and even just like, I mean, if I'm trying to understand this, the first thing I look at the intro, you create a view, but then I immediately wonder, my immediate question here is like, how does this fit into the bigger picture? And then, so maybe the layers could like fit in like almost right off the bat after this. And then we can link to other content. Yeah. So we can move the layers up front there. And then, maybe the view definition becomes its own top level item, and the processing model could either be a top level item or part of view definition. And most of this other stuff, we probably don't even need a separate artifacts tab, because if you go into, I mean, if you're looking at the view definition of item, basically all the only artifacts are either the view definition itself or the contents of this examples tab. So I don't think we even need this separate artifacts tab. So cool. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to break this up into, small pull requests. I'll do a couple that do nothing but remove content, and then then do another that maybe shifts some of this structure over, and we can see what we like. And there's always if I totally screw everything up, that's what reverts are for. So
awesome, thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, sure. All right. We have a few minutes left. Any other last minute items we wanted to touch on?
Yeah, I will start discussion about multiple resource types per view definition. I don't know, Ryan, you missed this meeting, yes, but I think we have a recording. So the general idea that at least we have use cases, let's say in the FHIR to a mob mapping, where we want to like apply view to different resource types. And we never kind of exercise this assumption that view should be only dedicated to one resource type. And when the Graham bring this, it's still worth to investigate. So
I think what we need for that is like an example use case, and I was wondering if the mop thing would help with that. So maybe we can pluck a sort of subset of that transformation out and talk about how that would look.
Another is, suppose you wanted to break address out into a normalized model, and you've got addresses and organizations and patients, and you wanted to land those in a common table. That seems something like that might be kind of common.
Yeah, that sounds quite reasonable. So that because like FHIR has data in FHIR can be modeled in different ways. So they can live in different resource types. So sometimes having view over different resource types sounds reasonable. And it's logically one unit. Not you can split it into two view definition and then union on a database layer, but it's still like logically one definition. So that's why there's some temptation to put it into one view definition.
Yeah, I think we need to weigh the complexity of the view definition and incorporating on that spec.
Yeah, when I was thinking about like from implementation point of view, yes, for ETL and for database, it doesn't change a lot, because you just do this union on database level, or for like ETL stuff, it shouldn't be too hard as well to support, because like in JavaScript, to be honest, our reference implementation do support this right now. So you can, even in test, we sometimes have different resource types, yes, and filter by resource. So
okay, I mean, we can dig into that. We're about out of time. I'm gonna need to drop here anyway, but I think either course seems reasonable to me. So we can chat about it in chat or in later meetings.
And having this use cases section in documentation would be nice as well. Yes, so how like to bring people like an intro to say how you can use SQL and FHIR. It's an important question, yes, not starting from technical details and try to explain how you can use it initially.
All right, I need to run to another meeting. So
thank you, everybody.
Thanks all.